Breaking news out of Dallas, Texas. All of this connected to a shooting there at a Dallas ICE facility. I do want to take you out to a live look that we do have. This is an aerial image that is coming in from our Fox 4 Dallas team as they fly overhead. A very active scene still hours and hours later. Here is what we know so far. At least one detainee fatally shot at that ICE facility. 2 others wounded by a sniper on a nearby rooftop. That information coming from Dallas police and the FBI giving an update after some confusion over the number of dead, saying that 2 people are deceased, and that does include the shooter. They are very focused on this vehicle that you see right there on your screen. It is parked right next to a staircase of sorts that does lead to the roof of one of the buildings right there near that ICE facility. One thing I want to do is pop this up on your screen. We showed this just a bit earlier, but it was posted by Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, and you can see bullet casings. Now, officials did explain that the shooter was on the rooftop of a nearby building and opened fire, reportedly into a van that was transporting ICE detainees. The FBI, during a news conference, confirming this was, quote, an act of targeted violence, and that those anti-ICE messages were found on the shell casing. Again, you see it right there on your screen as you look to the second one there from the right. It does say in blue, anti-ICE. Police say that they were alerted. It was around 6:40 a.m. local time this morning to reports of that shooting at that ICE facility in Dallas. Investigators adding that the sniper died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head as law enforcement approached. Now, we do not have any information so far about the shooter, the sniper here, who was involved in this attack. Again, here is what we know. 1 ICE detainee has died, 2 others critically injured, and the suspect also dead. We also have this post coming in just a short time ago here from Secretary Kristi Noem with the Department of Homeland Security. It says, for months, we've been warning politicians and the media to tone down their rhetoric about ICE law enforcement before someone was killed. These horrendous killings must serve as a wake-up call to the far left that their rhetoric about ICE has consequences, comparing ICE day in and day out to the Nazi Gestapo, the secret police, and slave patrols has consequences. The men and women of ICE are fathers and mothers, sons and daughters. They get up every morning to try and make our community safer. Like everyone else, we just want to go home to our families at night. The violence and dehumanization of these men and women who are simply enforcing the law must stop. We are praying for the victims and their families. Again, that statement here coming in from Secretary Kristi Noem with the Department of Homeland Security. Dan Bongino, the Deputy Director of the FBI, saying the FBI is fully engaged in conjunction with our state and federal law enforcement partners at the crime scene there in Dallas. Now, we also have some live looks here coming in from our different crews that are out there. This one a little bit kind of cutting in and out, but you can see just how many people do remain there on the scene as we are just hours removed from the situation. Do want to bring in Randy Sutton, retired police lieutenant and founder of the Wounded Blue, to discuss really everything that took place this morning. Randy, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us.
Sure thing. It's a pleasure to be here.
And I do want to start by asking you kind of a broad question here, as we do have that news conference that took place just about an hour ago. We played it for our viewers live and uninterrupted. What do you make of the information overall that has been released and the information that has not been released?
Well, this is a very dynamic scene. You have a sniper, shooting at this ICE facility, and it's a very confusing scene. There's a lot of chaos going on, trying to figure out, is there one shooter? Is there 2 shooters? Who was hit? Dealing with the actual injuries of the individuals. As that is taking place, you're looking for, where is the threat at this particular moment? Now, they discovered very, very quickly the fact that the shooter, they located that shooter and found that he had neutralized himself. I don't know whether it was when he realized that law enforcement was approaching him, or he did it prior to that. That's information we don't have yet. But The chaotic nature of this scene is very, very dynamic. You have multiple victims. You have the threat level that has to be ascertained and diminished as much as possible, and now you have the investigative process. But let's look at this from a different perspective. This was a targeted attack. If you look at the correlations between this and with suicide bombers, it's all about the what level of violence was utilized. In this particular case, it was a rifle. What you saw from that photograph, those weren't shell casings. That was an actual clip from a semi-automatic rifle that is utilized for. Those are 223 rounds that are high-powered rifle rounds, and so the fact that was left there, that was a message. This is terrorism. This is terrorism at every level. The fact that he shot into the van, we're going to have to try and figure out, did he believe that that was a transportation van transporting ICE officers? Because clearly his intent wasn't to kill detainees. His intent was to kill law enforcement officers from ICE. So, this is still in its very early stages, and there's a lot of questions that need to be answered.
And as we take a look at that, we were just, referring to the situation there where it does say anti-ice. And you definitely just touched on this. But going a little bit further into all of that, what will investigators do with this right here to kind of work to figure out a motive, all of that? Again, you're seeing the words anti-ice. We heard from investigators as they said that this was a, quote, act of targeted violence. They found the messages. So what do they do further by looking at this? Where does this kind of go from here?
Well, as I said, this investigation is in its infancy. There's going to be, if you look at how they're going to conduct this investigation, first of all, there's going to be the forensic analysis. That's going to be the scientific approach to the scene itself. They're going to be gathering evidence. They're going to be looking for DNA that will be on those rounds on the rifle. They'll be looking at the scene itself to determine what evidence needs to be gathered. Now, remember, they're not looking at a prosecution for this individual because he's dead, but they will be looking to see, are there any other people that are involved in this targeted terrorist attack? Nobody lives in a vacuum. We've seen this, play out many, many times, that people like this like to share the information. They're doing this because they want attention. They commit these acts of violence because they are trying to bring attention to their cause, and this is their statement. The fact that he wrote on these rounds, well, it's pretty clear that he's getting the message out. Now, determining who this individual is, they're going to be doing a deep dive into every aspect of this individual's life. They're going to be looking at his social media. They're going to be looking at any device that he has, his phone, his computer. They will be doing background investigation into who does he have relationships with? Is he living with someone? Did they know what this individual's plan was? Is he a loner? They're going to be doing a huge victimology on this individual and try and determine every aspect of this individual's previous life, and try and determine how was he radicalized? What was his, will there be a manifesto found, as we have seen so often? The fact that this individual took his own life shows a degree of commitment, if you will. Just like suicide bomber, they don't intend to survive this, and so it's intrinsically part of their makeup that they're going to want people to know why. This is part of their their MO, if you will, their makeup, that they want people to know why they committed this violence. And so it's going to be a deep dive into their every aspect of this guy's past life.
I want to get your expertise on this specifically. I know we keep talking about the bullet there. We have the round that says anti-ice on it. We also know that just a few weeks ago here, we had the assassination of Charlie Kirk, where there was a message written on the bullets, actually several of them. So I wanted to get your take as far as copycat situations. Is it rare to see messages that are written there on the bullets, the casings, whatever have you? Or is that something that we, see often or don't see?
No, it's not something you see very often. So when you ask a very pertinent question, did this individual get that little tidbit of this assassination, this crime, by seeing Charlie Kirk's murderer do the same thing? It's a really good point. Usually it's a written manifesto. Usually there's notes written. They still have to determine whether or not they determine if there's something else out there. Just a couple words on a bullet doesn't really get his message out to any real degree. So this could have been an afterthought. This could have been done, prior to his coming to the scene, where he knew that he was going to leave this clip there with these bullets in it, so that the message could come out. But this shows the level of sickness that these individuals have, that they're willing to kill indiscriminately for their own, weird politicization and their hatred of ICE. We have seen, and keep this in mind. In my I've 34 years as a police officer, and the level of violence that we're seeing towards law enforcement, directed towards them in a much more calculated fashion. The ambush killings of police officers has risen dramatically. But when you look at what these ICE officers are facing, the violence has steadily increased under the new methodologies being employed by ICE in order to rid this country of illegal aliens. But the incredible politics involved here, the rhetoric that is and the vitriol that's been spouted by even political leadership, where they basically have condoned violence towards ICE. You have actual elected officials who are condoning, not only condoning, they are putting out there in the public that it is okay. And this is frightening for law enforcement officers. In my role as the founder of the Wounded Blue, we deal with injured officers every single day. In fact, I am at a conference right now. I just not a half hour ago had a conversation with an officer who was ambushed and shot in the throat by an individual and is alive to tell the tale today. But it devastated his life. So we see what's left behind of these officers who have been targeted, and it is very, very dramatic. The fact that ambush killings of law enforcement officers, the ambushes of these ICE officers who are literally simply doing the job that is being required of them, and it is shameful that you see elected officials not only condoning, but actually putting out in the public that this is okay.
What you're looking at there on the left-hand side of your screen, that is a live look over Dallas coming in from our Fox 4 Dallas station. And you can actually see there, I'm going to take it full to give you a better look at that. But that is the vehicle that officials believe is the suspect's vehicle. They have been seen going in and out, and it's parked right next to the staircase where that rooftop, it leads up to the rooftop, which is where it appears that those bullets were fired. And that's what I wanted to ask you about, Randy. When we talk about a sniper situation as it's been described by officials there and investigators. How is that different when you have law enforcement, whether you're talking local law enforcement, state, federal, that are responding to a situation where it's not just an active shooter situation, but it is a sniper? It's someone who's on top of a building doing this.
Yeah, and the fact that they're using an elevated position um, makes it even more dangerous for law enforcement officers on the ground because you have a field of fire. That field of fire is, exponentially larger when you're up in an elevated position. The dealing with this now, local law enforcement, they receive training all the time, but usually that training is not focused on ambush attacks. It is something that has to now be put into the training repertoire of officers because we're seeing, a rise in these attacks. Military personnel are trained in these type of incidents. Law enforcement has really not been focused on sniper attacks. However, with the increasing number of ambushes that we have seen and the devastating effects. I mean, look at in Utah just a month ago, we had officers killed in an ambush attack. We had it just the other day with officers, another deadly, 5 officers shot when entering a home on a domestic violence. So we're seeing a increasing number of these attacks, and law enforcement is sometimes slow to realize the threats and then train to deal with them. But it's really difficult to train from an ambush attack because you're conducting business when carnage rains down from a position that is distant. It is very, very difficult to train for that in some effective manner in order to save your own life and save the lives of others.
And again, you are looking at an aerial view here coming in from Skyfox. They are flying overhead. You can see folks are on that rooftop there. Investigators. Obviously, it looks a lot different than it did around 6:40-ish this morning local time as you had that whole row of police vehicles. We're talking about several agencies, local, state, federal. When you have a situation that takes place like this, who takes the lead? Is it automatically the federal agency there, especially considering it's an ICE facility where this happened?
Well, initially it will be local law enforcement because they are the ones those are the boots on the ground when it comes down to emergency response situations. So it would be the local police agency that they're the ones that are getting the 911 calls. Those are the ones that are trained to respond to these type of situations. Now, when it comes down to the investigative process, because this is targeted at a federal facility, without a shadow of a doubt, the FBI will play a major role in the investigative process here. Remember, we don't have a prosecution per se unless they make a determination that there are other people involved in this. Is there a conspiracy? That is something that they will be, delving into, in a major way. So this will be an investigative process in trying to determine all of the facets of this, and that investigative process may, because it was targeted at an ICE facility, could very well be given over to the FBI, Department of Justice, to complete the investigation.
As we move forward, my last question for you here, just based on your expertise there, we're talking decades in law enforcement. Explain to me what question or questions that you have that you hope maybe we will get answers to, whether it's from Dallas Police, the FBI, ICE, anyone out there regarding what happened today.
Oh, the first questions that I have is who is this guy, and why? Why did he become so radicalized that he's willing to commit his life to the taking of other lives? What motivated him to do this? And who who played a role in that? Is this your lone wolf attack, or is this a conspiracy? Are there other people involved in this? And if so, was this part of an organized response? Was this part of an organized, criminal activity? Was he funded by someone to do this? These are the questions that I have. These are the questions that will be on the minds of any investigator that's there. And but the here's the other aspect of this. When you're looking at terrorism, what's the goal? And it is to terrorize. It is to strike fear into the hearts and minds of the people that he is targeting. That is ICE. So you look at the ICE officers that are around the country, and all of law enforcement, by the way, they're looking at this and they're going, okay, here's another ambush attack. Once again, they're going to be on a very heightened level of hypervigilance. This is, and here's why this is dangerous, because hypervigilance is what causes a lot of emotional and mental anguish for law enforcement. It is the base of post-traumatic stress. It is what creates post-traumatic stress injury. And you look at this prolonged atmosphere of violence towards ICE, towards law enforcement. And like I said, with the Wounded Blue, we look at physical and we look at emotional and mental injury. This is increasing the physical danger. It is increasing the emotional response, the possibility of being afflicted by post-traumatic stress. And this continues in the violence towards law enforcement, and the fact that it is being condoned by many in public office, and is something that we really need to address as a nation. That there is something that is so evil when you're considering those that will actively take lives of other people for political purposes. And it is not something that should be condoned. It is something that needs to be condemned by every leader in America. And I pray that it happens.
All right. Randy, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and help break all this down. Obviously, there is still a lot left to figure out. We are just hours removed from this situation that unfolded earlier today in Dallas. Thank you again for taking the time to be here.